So, we've got two big stories to talk about in this video. But before we dive into all that, I wanted to say at the beginning here that the Canucks do have themselves a game later tonight against the Dallas Stars. Now, the biggest story about Dallas is the fact that Mikko Rantanen came onto the lineup and scored a goal and an assist in his Stars debut. Playing on a line with Hintz and J-Rob, they were really strong together, although Hintz ended up getting injured, so of course we hope the best for him. Anyways, it's going to be a Vancouver-Dallas showdown at 6 p.m. PST. I'm not going to be watching the game. I have some other plans tonight. Yeah, believe it or not, I actually kind of do have a life in some capacity, but the Canucks do play the Stars. I'll try to make a post-game video about it after so we can recap and talk about everything that happened, but I will not be able to watch everything as it happens live. Now, let's get into today's video commentary, because today we're looking at a guy that was actually traded over to the Canucks organization. And you've been staring at his pretty mug for the past minute and a bit here. It is Jujhar Khaira heading over to the Abbotsford Canucks. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, isn't this guy an NHL vet? Hasn't he played a bunch in the league? He's also a hometown guy. Yes, and yes. It was announced earlier yesterday that the Abbotsford Canucks have acquired Jujhar Khaira in exchange for future considerations. That is actually worded properly. Abbotsford Canucks acquire Khaira in exchange future considerations. They're missing a word here. It should say for. But this is what the press release goes out there and says. Abbotsford Canucks GM Ryan Johnson announced today that the club has acquired forward Khaira from the Syracuse Crunch in exchange for future considerations. A native of Surrey, British Columbia, Khaira notably became the third player of Punjabi descent to play in the National Hockey League, behind Vancouver Canucks alumni Robin Bawa and current Abbotsford Canucks head coach Manny Malhotra. That is just so cool. The trivia knowledge of this. The third guy ever, and the previous two have had ties with the Vancouver Canucks in the past. It's almost like growing the game actually works, folks. Who would have known? Especially here in this part of the country. But the 6'5", 214-pound winger was selected by Edmonton in the third round of the 2012 draft and made his debut with the Oilers on November 28, 2015. He had scored his first career goal in 2017 against Mike Smith of the Arizona Coyotes. He also had a decorated career before being drafted, which we will get into and more in his Elite Prospects page. This show is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Go out there and check out that first link in the description to save some money on your VPN, get some free months, and support this YouTube channel in the process. Khaira is a big guy, 6'5", 214, left-handed center-left wing, who has had himself a sizable amount of NHL action over the years, making his debut with the Oil in 2015-16, ultimately playing there until 2020-2021. Khaira then found himself in the Chicago Blackhawks organization, had 14 points in 51 games played 2 seasons ago, and then last season spent the whole season in the Minnesota Wild organization. He was up with the regular Wild getting a game, but he played the majority of his time with the Iowa Wild in the AHL, scoring 18 points in 22 games. This year, Khaira has 9 points in 18 Syracuse Crunch games, and overall, I mean, just as a guy who's been able to suit up in over 300 games of NHL action, and being a fellow BCHL NCAA alumni, there certainly is a profile here that makes Jujhar Khaira a very interesting acquisition for the Vancouver Canucks farm team. Now, based off of the contract, it does seem like the contract he is on is an AHL deal. It doesn't look like he has NHL capability unless the Vancouver Canucks were to give a contract out to this guy. But then again, I'm not too sure if they'd be able to do that because it would have been signed after the deadline, something like that. Somebody please educate me on the ins and outs as to whether or not Khaira could play for the Vancouver Canucks this season. It doesn't look like it, but he's a guy whose overall playing time has declined in an NHL capacity, primarily due to concussions. You can see that the point production was honestly okay. 21 points and 69 games played. 7 years ago, 18 points in 60 games. 6 years ago, back when he was in his early to mid-20s, he was fine. It's just over the years he has been getting hurt, and that's been very unfortunate for Khaira and his development. Overall, just acknowledging that there is a middle to bottom six caliber frame out of Khaira and a skill set that allows him to score some really nice goals, like this one that he scored 6 years ago against the Vancouver Canucks. Khaira spins and pots a slick, short-handed goal against Jacob Markstrom to make it 1-0 Edmonton in a very, very unfortunate turn of events for Travis Green and the Louis Eriksson-led Vancouver Canucks. But Khaira has had a very accomplished career. Injury slowed him down, which is why he has been held out of the NHL the past little while here. And ultimately, for the AHL's Abby Canucks, this is a very good veteran depth add. I guess at 30 years old, we can say he's more of a veteran guy nowadays, right? But aside from the AHL's Abby Canucks team going out there and making a trade for future considerations for nothing, literally, let's go out there and talk about the actual NHL trade news that was making headlines yesterday. In particular, they were making Saturday headlines because Elliotte Friedman went out there and spoke all about the Vancouver Canucks and the Brock Boeser trade situation on Saturday headlines yesterday. Now, we did make a video yesterday going over Patrick Johnston's article because he did write about how apparently the Vancouver Canucks had an offer for a first-round pick in a Brock Boeser trade, but they just said no because that first-round pick offer would have also had the Canucks including maybe a Willander or a Lekkerimaki or an Elias Pettersson. Carolina was reported to have been giving Vancouver a Jesperi Kotkaniemi plus a first-round pick return only if the Vancouver Canucks included a prospect in a Brock Boeser package. So this was a really big red flag for a lot of Canucks fans. It was seen as really not a great move, but I did find it kind of interesting because even though Patrick Johnston wrote about yesterday, hey, apparently the Canucks had a first-round pick on the table, we had Elliotte Friedman say on headlines that the Canucks did not have a first-round pick on the table. This article on CanucksDaily.com goes out there and transcribes Friedman's comments. Yeah, I just wanted to get to the bottom of it. It was a really odd media conference yesterday, and I'm sure Boeser wasn't happy with some of the things that were said. But I just tried to get to the bottom of it, like what happened there. The Vancouver Canucks indicated nothing less than a first-rounder for Brock Boeser. They weren't taking anything less than a first, and they didn't get it. So they decided to hold the player, and we'll see where it goes from here. So that in itself is a super interesting update to hear that Elliotte Friedman's sources are telling him that Vancouver did not get a first-round pick for Brock Boeser. When Patrick Johnston wrote in the province yesterday that, hey, the Canucks did have a pick on the table for Boeser that was in the first round, along with Kotkaniemi, but it wouldn't have been just for Boeser by himself. The Canucks would have had to add. I guess that's not really what Friedman is referring to here. I think if you assume that Vancouver would not have traded a Willander or a Lekkerimaki or somebody, then Vancouver wouldn't have received the first-round pick in exchange for Boeser. That makes a little bit more sense in my mind. But Friedman's update did get a lot of people going out there and questioning just where exactly the trade market was for Brock. And in a way, it kind of illuminates why Patrick Allvin made the comments that he did, saying, hey, if you had seen the offers I got for Boeser, I would have to leave the room. Kind of disrespectful, but then again, if that's the truth, if that's really what teams were going out there and giving up for Brock, then I guess that's all we gotta believe, right? Now, whether or not you believe it or not, that's an entirely other situation. We had seen other people, myself included, people in the comment section of our videos, people texting on 650's text line saying, hey, like, Bavilli got a second. Kuzmenko got a third. You saying Brock Boeser couldn't get a first if those two guys ended up getting those kinds of picks in return? And don't get me with the salary cap retention stuff, man. We already spoke about that yesterday, but Vancouver having only one salary retention spot left doesn't matter when Brock Boeser, his contract is expiring at the end of the year anyway. So retain 50%, get $3 million on your book, and then by the time summer comes around, that retained salary spot gets returned to you. There was no reason to go out there and use salary retention spot as an excuse to not make a Boeser trade and to not retain any salary, because if Brock Boeser at 6-point-something million is not getting a first, Brock Boeser at $3 million certainly would if you say that Anthony Beauvillier and Kuzmenko got a second and a third. So, I don't know. We'll see whether or not this actually is the truth here. Friedman's sources are usually pretty good ones, but I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the trade that the Abbotsford Canucks ended up making, as well as the trade proposals that the Vancouver Canucks were getting for Brock Boeser. Thoughts in the comment section about Jujhar Khaira? What are your thoughts about Brock Boeser and his presence on the Canucks? What are your thoughts on the game upcoming against the Dallas Stars? Let me know in the comment section how you feel. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.